This episode of Harvey Brownstone Interviews is brought to you by the Harvey Brownstone Talk Show Blend Coffee, available at hollywoodblends.com. Everyone's saying it's the best coffee they've ever tasted. Why not give it a try and see for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a popular actor, producer, and director who has brought us many great performances on the stage, as well as in movies and on television. On Broadway, he starred in 3 classic Neil Simon plays, Brighton Beach Memoirs, Biloxi Blues, and Broadway Bound, and he reprised his starring role as Eugene Jerome in the movie version of Brighton Beach Memoirs. He also played Stanley Jerome in the TV movie version of Broadway Bound. His feature film credits include Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Caddyshack 2, Stealing Home, Weekend at Bernie's 1 and 2, Class Action, Death Becomes Her, Breaking the Rules, Swinging with the Finkels, and Andover, for which he won the Audience Choice Award at the Orlando Film Festival. And for his performance in Snatched, he was named Best Supporting Actor at the Hoboken International Film Festival. And on television, we remember him as Jonathan Maxwell on Gimme a Break, Jonathan Elliott on The Single Guy, Harry Kennison on In Case of Emergency, Harrison Marlowe on Significant Mother, Dave on Good Girls, and Daniel Bennett on Moonshine, in addition to a whole slew of guest appearances on many other great TV shows like ER, Friends, CSI Miami, Medium, Hot in Cleveland, Law and Order SVU, and Scandal, to name only a few. He's also appeared in numerous TV movies, including Challenge of a Lifetime, For Richer, For Poorer, 1201, The Inspectors 1 and 2, These Old Broads, Bobby's Girl, Jack's Family Adventure, and many more. And among the movies he's directed, he was named Best Director at the LA Comedy Film Festival for his 2013 feature film, Another Dirty Movie. And now he's starring in a new movie called Feeling Randy, in which he plays the father of a teenager struggling to come to terms with his sexuality. Here's the trailer. Watch this.
I can't remember who thought of it, but somehow we decided we were going to go to the Kitty Ranch, this legal brothel in Nevada. And I know you gotta pay for it, but no more virgin crap.
Gotta get Andy here laid.
You wanna get laid, huh?
Yep.
You're trying to undress her, man. You're trying to get her naked and nail her.
Right, but I'm just kind of thinking about more than that.
You know, it's not all driving around chasing girls.
It's just a house. A weird house.
You a virgin? You sure you like girls?
I feel like I've lost a piece of my brain, or I'm growing a new piece really, really, really fast.
That's awesome!
What the hell is going on?
You okay?
I don't know.
All those people out there, they're just pretending. Whatever's going on, it's just the man stepping on your groove.
Come on, Randy, let's go!
That's crazy.
Well, that's life. Can you explain yourself?
Guys, we can't all go at the same time. It would look suspicious.
Yeah.
Of what?
I'm delighted to welcome Jonathan Silverman to our show. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Harvey. It's nice to be here. My God, you must be exhausted listing all those boring credits.
They were not boring. They were exciting. You know, your father and grandfather were very well-known rabbis. Was there any pressure on you to become a rabbi?
You know, you're right. My grandfather was a rabbi. My dad was a rabbi. I suppose they were hoping I would follow into the family, business. I was the only son, so perhaps I was expected to give it a shot. I knew from a pretty early age that that wasn't necessarily my calling, but I did enjoy watching my dad perform, in a sense. So I might have gotten the the bug from him in terms of just motivating people and getting people to think and laugh and cry. So in the back of my head, maybe I turned a little bit of that into what it is I do for a living.
That's actually not too far-fetched, because I think when you're a rabbi or a clergyman, or in my case, I was a judge, you do have a public persona that's different from the personality that you knew of him when he was just dad. So you learned from a very young age that he could turn it on.
Yep.
And that was a different person than when he was just at home. So yeah, you got a very interesting exposure to performing.
Yeah, certainly. And this was in Los Angeles, so a number of his congregants were in show business, ranging from Red Buttons to Buddy Hackett to Don Rickles. So it was a very interesting childhood, to say the least. I learned an awful lot.
What did your family think of your show business aspirations?
At first, they thought I was crazy. As you mentioned in your lovely introduction, thank you again. My first paying job was a Broadway show in New York, and growing up in Los Angeles, to all of a sudden get employment 3,000 miles away as a late teenager. I was 18 years old. Yeah, my family was a bit shocked, concerned, but incredibly supportive, and always were. I mean, they were constantly in my corner, and they came to just about everything they could possibly come to, whether it was theater or when I was doing live audience sitcoms. They would crash movie sets whenever they could. So I was surrounded by a lot of love and support.
So in Jewish, we would say that you gave your parents a lot of nachas.
I gave him a lot of things, but yes, there was some nachas in there too. I gave him a lot of spilkas. I gave him a lot of grief, but yes, I definitely gave them some joy as well.
You starred in 3 Neil Simon plays on Broadway and in 5 of his movies. And in many of those productions, Jonathan, you were playing different versions of Neil Simon himself. Did he ever tell you what it was about you that made him see himself in you?
I remember asking him. I remember trying to figure out what it was that he felt a connection with. He never really told me. I did discuss it with his daughters on several occasions, and they just said there was this intangible connection. So whatever it was, I'm incredibly grateful. And in many ways, Neil would comment on how this is solely just slightly based on his childhood or based on his brother. But I did spend a lot of time when I was in the same room with him, which was quite a bit, observing, studying, picking up little mannerisms of him that he might not have ever noticed on screen. I also had portrayed his brother, Stanley, in the movie version of Broadway Bound, which Jason Alexander had created on stage in the play version of Broadway Bound. And I spent a lot of time just hanging out with Danny, trying to pick up little pieces of his personality. And I think I might have nailed Danny more than I nailed Neil, because Neil certainly made mention of the fact that it felt like he was in conversation with his actual brother during that production.
Well, as you know, we had Marsha Mason on our show a few months ago, and we've become friends. And in preparation for this interview, I asked her, what do you think Neil saw in Jonathan Silverman that kept him casting Jonathan all the time? And she said that Neil saw a more lovable version of himself in you, more lovable.
Wow, that's fascinating. Oh, that's deep. I didn't even know Marsha Mason knew who I was. That's very powerful. I mean, I found Neil to be very lovable. Of course, I was never married to him, as Marsha was. I only got to work with him during the latter portion of his career. I found him to be incredibly kind, incredibly supportive. But sure, I could see how that might be the case, that he needed to look at his past and earlier versions of himself through rose-colored glasses. And I think the character of Eugene is just so lovable. He's impossible not to root for. He certainly has his idiosyncrasies, and he's annoying as hell at times, but he's just so endearing and so sweet that you can't not root for him and his happiness and his pursuit of happiness.
Oh, absolutely. Now, your very first TV movie was Challenge of a Lifetime, co-starring Penny Marshall. What was she like to work with?
Wow, you're really pulling them out. I actually had no idea what I was doing. It was, I think I was still doing the play of Brighton Beach Memoirs at night. So this was an interesting day gig. Penny was fantastic, and I certainly grew up a giant fan of hers. And this was right on the heels of Laverne and Shirley. I mean, she was one of the biggest celebrities I had ever encountered. But she was also incredibly kind, and playing her son, she definitely took a lot of care and just support and sweetness. It was a fun little piece, but really looking back at those times, it was all it was like a college course. I was just studying and watching and learning because man, I was so young. I think I had done my first ever movie that got me my SAG card, which was a picture with Sarah Jessica Parker called "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," and on the heels of that, this Penny Marshall movie. So green, I was just so green and so happy to just have this experience and pinching myself constantly, wondering, is this really, really happening? And boom, there it was.
I think being lovable really helped.
I guess it helps. I guess it helps. Yeah, yeah.
It does.
Being kind and grateful it goes a long way.
A long way. Now, of course, I have to ask you, Jonathan, about Weekend at Bernie's, which has become a real cult classic. Are you surprised by the success of the film?
Yeah, I'm very surprised by it. The making of it was a very interesting experience. Certainly thought the script was hilarious and written by a man I adore. His name is Robert Klein, and he wrote a movie with George Segal and Ruth Gordon called Where's Papa, which was always one of my favorite movies. Also a very dark comedy that some people get and some people don't. So I knew this script bordered on that fine line between, are people going to enjoy this or are people going to be so repulsed by it? And it was directed by an incredible director named Ted Kotcheff, who has done plenty of comedy, but he's also done a lot of action adventure movies like Uncommon Valor and the first Rocky film. And so we didn't really know the texture of what this piece would ultimately be like. The doing of it was difficult and hard. A lot of physical comedy, a lot of bruises and broken bones by all of us, especially Terry Kaiser, who played basically a limp dead body for 75% of it. But the fact that here we're talking about it 30 some odd years later and people still have joy and smiles on their faces, just thinking of it. And when it comes on television, which is, I mean, you can't avoid it, it's just always there, and the references to the movie are always there. They become part of our zeitgeist. I mean, I even heard it referenced in the Republican National Convention. Someone was making fun of our president, and they called it a weekend at Bernie's administration. It just doesn't go away. So I guess I should be proud that I was involved in a project that has had such life, no pun intended, but certainly didn't think it would.
But as you know, the sequel, Weekend at Bernie's, was not a success. What do you think went wrong?
I think what went wrong was that it was made. I was shocked because it was a few years after the original came out that the creative minds got together and said, "Hey, we've got some money. We're going to make another one." And I'm like, "What? Another what? The movie stars a dead guy. It was 4 or 5 years ago. What are we doing?" And they said, "Listen, we're going to go ahead and make this movie. Please don't make us recast your character or have to mention that your character has passed away in some tragedy, and you'll have to go on, with the rest of your career explaining why you weren't in the movie. It's probably a lot easier to say why you did this sequel than why you didn't." I think it was a very special movie, sort of wrapped in a bubble, and the fact that it was successful at the right particular time, it probably should have been left alone. The fact that we went back in there and tried to recreate and mess, with the madness and the formula. Although funny enough, we had so much more fun making the sequel than we did the original. I suppose because we just assumed everyone's in on the joke, everyone's gonna, laugh and have a good time. So let's not, take this too seriously, and let's laugh with them. Maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe we were enjoying ourselves too much off screen, and it just didn't translate on.
That's actually a very interesting perception. Lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place very often.
Yeah,
And maybe there was a confidence there that projected itself into the production. Now, I
yeah.
have to tell you, one of my favorite Jonathan Silverman performances. 1992, you played Stanley Jerome in the TV movie version of Broadway Bound, co-starring the legendary Anne Bancroft and Hume Cronin. Can you share any memories of working with them?
Wow, I was floored to be involved with that group. Jerry Orbach was playing the dad. I like every other human adored Anne Bancroft. I mean, there really was never any better actor on the planet. So to get the chance to spend a few weeks with her rehearsing this piece that I knew so well, and then to work with her in front of the camera and have lunch with her and her husband Mel Brooks, it was truly mind-boggling. It was a very strange experience, and joyful and wonderful. I don't mean to belittle it, but it was a very strange experience to have done the play of Broadway Bound for a year of my life, and then a few years later play a different character. As I mentioned on stage, I played Eugene, and Jason Alexander played Stanley. And in the film, Neil thought, well, I'm too old now to play Eugene, but why don't you take a crack at my older brother? But I kept hearing Jason Alexander's line readings because I did 500 performances of him saying these exact words. And I was the one listening to them, not necessarily the one saying them. So it was a bit of a shock to try and twist out of that mold. But God, it was exciting, and I had so much fun. And it was also very strange listening to Corey Parker, who was playing Eugene, the role that I had played, saying the lines that I had said so many times. So it was fascinating. I really felt part of a odd repertory company, the Neil Simon, traveling circus company. But these experiences just don't happen very often. So looking back at it now, I just beyond tickled that I had to, have that experience on my resume.
And Mel Brooks, you were having lunch with Mel Brooks.
Yeah, we shot Broadway Bound entirely at what used to be Warner Brothers Hollywood, and it's across the street from a restaurant that is still there, that has been there since Hollywood was created. It's called the Formosa Cafe, and it's an old train. It's basically a Chinese restaurant, and it's across the street from the studio. So that's where everyone would go for lunch. And yeah, I just remember having chow mein with Anne and Mel and Hume and Jessica. It was like, what is happening? But it was a great couple months of my life. I really really enjoyed that period.
Oh, I'm so glad you had that experience. And then
Yeah.
you got to play Meryl Streep's agent, Jane Norman, in the
Yeah.
1992 movie Death Becomes Her. Did you have fun on that set with her?
Yes. Oh God, yes. I was terribly nervous. It was only 3 days. They chopped 90% of my stuff out, but those 3 days of being on set with the great Meryl Streep and being able to do back and forth with her, because a lot of it was improv, and I mean it. It was probably the best acting class I've ever had. I wish I could call Zemeckis and asked him if he still has any of those old scenes left over anywhere, just so I could have them, because they didn't make the final cut. But wow, the experience of being on set with her and Goldie Hawn and Bruce Willis, and that was terrific.
I wish they would release a director's cut of that movie so we could see all those scenes put back
That
in
would
the
be
movie.
nice. That would be really nice. I remember when the trailers were hitting the theater before the movie came out. My character was her agent and Goldie Hawn's agent. And there was a lot of exposition where I was explaining to this hot blonde wannabe actress in the scene who everyone was and what they've done. So they sort of used me a lot in the trailer to explain what was happening in the course of the film. And I would get phone calls from friends saying, "Your Meryl Streep movie's coming out next week. We're so excited. Oh my God, your Goldie Hawn movie's coming out." And at that point, Mr. Zemeckis had already called me and said, "Listen, the film was running long. Your stuff was so great, but we had to edit a lot of your stuff out." So I had to explain to everybody, I'm in the trailer a lot, but when you see the movie, you're going to have to look really carefully and listen because you won't see a lot of me. But yeah, it'd be nice to have that. I do have that trailer somewhere, and I've showed it to my wife and some friends over the years. So I do have some proof that I exist in that.
Oh, you definitely exist in that. I mean, you've worked with legends. In 1998, you co-starred with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau in The Odd Couple 2. That was your second time working with Jack Lemmon because you also co-starred with him in the TV movie For Richer for Poorer, I believe. What was it like working with Jack Lemmon and, of course, Walter Matthau?
Jack Lemmon was my idol, if I'm allowed to say that. All of his films, and I knew him on a slight personal level, although he would never know that. I went to school with his daughter. I used to golf quite a bit, and I would see him on the golf course in the driving range. But I was just such a fan of who he was as a human being, and his kindness, and his smile, and his joy. And in that first film, that HBO film For Richer for Poorer, where I played his son, and most of my scenes were just one on one with Jack Lemmon. I was just I was just in awe, and watching him work and create. And he was certainly at the point of his life and career where he could have just, I don't want to say phoned it in, and just hit his mark and set his lines, and I'll see you in the trailer. But he was jumping on board like it was his first ever gig, and he was trying to find the meat of every scene and the comedy and the and it was incredible. It was just an absolute pleasure. And then a few years later, I got to work with him again in probably him and Mr. Mathau's most iconic and well known characters of the Odd Couple boys, and then I got to play Walter Matthau's son, and I got to do the same experience with Walter. I just a kid in a candy store. Just to have those experiences, and to have Neil on set again, it was just too much to handle.
When you're working on a Neil Simon movie as opposed to a play on stage, was Neil Simon actively involved on the set as much as he was in the Broadway production?
He was certainly actively involved in the movies. Unlike many other movies that I've been in. In Neil's movies, he always figured out a way to allow us to have rehearsal time. And that's certainly where we would see Neil the most. And that's pretty much where we would see Neil the most in the stage productions as well. And his nickname was Doc Simon. And that's because he would always carry a yellow legal pad and a pen. And he would fix anything that wasn't going well. And he would just scribble it out and hand it to you, and you'd have a few minutes to rehearse it, and then you'd put it on stage later that night. And he was a doctor of his scripts, and he certainly had the opportunity to do it on his films as well. He would always be there. But of course, the way films work, and the speed, and the money that's sort of burning, we wouldn't get as much of that. But boy, he would be involved, and he would constantly want changes. We would relish the chance to make those changes. I have in a collection a stack of those actual yellow legal pad pieces of paper with his notes on them, and I cherish those, and I cherish his memory.
If they ever made a biopic of Neil Simon's life, would you like to play him?
That's a fascinating question. He certainly would be an interesting character.
I could put you in touch with Marsha. She'll give you lots of preparation.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. And would Marsha be playing herself?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, you got to play Shirley MacLaine's son in These Old Broads, one of the most delicious TV movies ever made, with Elizabeth Taylor, Debbie Reynolds, Joan Collins. What was it like working with those legends?
These Old Broads. When that movie came about, I remember asking my manager and agent, saying, is this real? Are they actually making a movie with these people? And they're asking me to be a part of it? It was shocking. Elizabeth Taylor, Shirley MacLaine, Debbie Reynolds, Joan Collins, written and produced by Carrie Fisher. There was so much history backstage, on stage. What was happening? They were all so lovely. I was lucky enough to be in scenes with all of them constantly. A lot of one-on-ones, a lot of group scenes, but I really relish the scenes that I had with them, the one-on-one scenes. They were so kind. They were all lovingly flirtatious. I was one of the few males on set, so it was such a hoot. And the stories, just listening to them tell the stories of their past and and the gossip and all the tea that was spilled. It was just terrific.
You know, everyone was shocked that Elizabeth Taylor and Debbie Reynolds would appear in a movie together because of the whole Eddie Fisher thing. Was
Yep.
the atmosphere on the set pleasant?
It was very pleasant. And I could be telling the story wrong, but I believe this is what Carrie herself told me when I asked her, because she spent a great deal of her childhood picking up the pieces of her parents' horrible breakup. And her mom, of course, was best friends with Elizabeth Taylor. And Elizabeth Taylor one day ran off with Carrie's father. So a lot of animosity, a lot of bad blood. And later in life, Carrie and Elizabeth became friendly. I believe they reunited at some fabulous Hollywood party. And Elizabeth offered the olive branch and said, if there's anything I could ever do to make up for what happened to you as a child, please let me know. And she said, I'm going to write a movie, Elizabeth, and it's going to star you and my mom. And this is what happened.
Just amazing. Tell me
Yeah.
something. When you get cast in a movie with people that are larger than life, superstar legends, do you get starstruck?
Absolutely. I mean, I get starstruck just working with almost anybody I admire, anybody I've seen on stage or a TV or movie role. The that level of anxiety and being starstruck eventually fades, and thankfully I'm able to focus and concentrate and do my work. But on that set, yeah, I mean, I just couldn't help it. I just remember going, oh my God, just keep breathing, just keep breathing. This is Shirley MacLaine. You're doing a scene with Shirley MacLaine. Oh my God, don't fuck it up. But it was incredible.
I'm so glad you've had these experiences. Well, I'll tell you, early on in our show, I got starstruck when I was privileged enough to do the last in-depth interview that Louis Gossett Jr. ever
Oh,
gave.
wow.
And you made two movies with him, The Inspectors 1 and 2, the late, great Louis Gossett Jr. It was such an honor for me to spend 40 minutes with him. I can only imagine you must have had some great conversations with him.
Such a lovely man, such a powerful man. It was, it was these, police dramas. I assumed the first one was going to be the only one. I didn't realize we would make another. And I don't often get the opportunity to play, cops with a gun and a badge. So that was intimidating enough. The fact that I'd be doing it, opposite Oscar-winning Lou Gossett was such a kick. But he was so gracious and so lovely, and man, we just had so much fun. And the fact that we got to do it another time was just so joyful. I miss him terribly. I would see him quite a bit, and I just miss that man and his energy and his soul.
Yeah, he was really a human angel, I have to say.
Yeah.
Now, in the movie Frank and Ava, about Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner, you played Columbia music executive Manny Sachs, and I hear you're going to play him again in a new movie called Sinatra Eternity. Is that right?
You never know. I mean, I sometimes hear about things that I have no idea I'm going to be in, and sometimes they happen, and sometimes they don't. But I did see that on a list, and hey, if it happens, great. but I don't have a start date yet, so we'll see.
I hope it happens. You did a great job that first time. Why shouldn't you
Oh,
play him
thanks.
again?
Okay, thank you.
You were in a very important TV movie in 2003 called Deacons for Defense, co-starring Forrest Whitaker and Ozzie Davis. It was based on a true story about a group of African Americans in Louisiana in 1964 who band together to fight the Ku Klux Klan. Making that movie must have been quite an emotional experience for you.
That was a very powerful film, and yes, playing a character based on a group of young men. They were very careful to not make it based on just one person, but a lot of research went into it on my part, and of course the filmmakers. So it was a bit of a history lesson, a shocking history lesson, and then to get to work with Forrest and Ozzie Davis, and to be around a project as important as this. It was very powerful and very grueling. It was not an easy shoot, but very proud to be in that movie, Deacons for Defense. Yeah.
I think it's one of the movies in your body of work that really has enormous social significance. It's just a great thing to see your name on something like that. Now, I know your longest running gig playing the same character was on the TV series The Single Guy.
Right.
You played Jonathan Elliott for 2 seasons in 43 episodes. Your show was number 4 in the ratings, and the network still canceled it. Did they ever tell you why they did that?
Yes. Most of the various executives who I have run into over the decades usually say the same thing of, "Oh my God, we messed up. We never should have canceled your show. We didn't know." You have to remember this was, I think, seasons 2 and 3 of Friends. And we were on right after Friends. And I suppose they thought, Friends, very successful show. I don't think they realized at the time that it would be one of the most successful shows ever made. So the fact that we were losing, 4%, 5% of the Friends audience in their minds was a failure, as opposed to them thinking, my God, they're hanging on to 95, 96% of the Friends audience. Because any show that followed Friends in the subsequent 7, 8 seasons, they were lucky to get 50%, 60% of those eyeballs. But we were in a way the guinea pig. We were the first show to be on after them. So it was a great experience. It was a challenging experience. I think I was ready to let it go because, as you mentioned, it was and still is the longest gig I've ever had playing the same character. So I just didn't have it in my makeup, to go into a possible 8, 9 year run of anything. I think I would really like it now, but at the time I was like, oh, good, 2 years. This was great. Okay, see, I'm going to try something else. But yes, constantly, whenever I run into the old brass at NBC or the various folks who have moved on from Castle Rock and Universal, and it's always talked about. Like, oh God, we didn't know how successful it was at the time. We assumed it wasn't doing well.
They should have looked at the ratings. You were number 4. When you're filming a sitcom in front of a live audience, are you playing to the 4 cameras or are you playing to the audience?
God, it's a great question, and I'm always asking myself that. It's a particular genre that I admire very much as a watcher, as a viewer. I mean, some of my favorite shows are live audience shows from the present and certainly the past. Going back to All in the Family, to Golden Girls. I mean, I will catch on TV Land or whatever, an old episode of something, and I'm glued. The doing of it is a bit of a mystery. My wife, who's a wonderful actress named Jennifer Finnegan, is so good at it. Some people have it, and some people don't. I love doing theater. I love being on stage. I love working with an audience and, having the ability to feel the emotional shifts between the comedy and the sadness and the energy. But you're right. The audience is there. The cameras are here. How do you find a way to do both? And it's a bit of a magic trick, and it's never easy. I've done a few episodes of live audience shows since that. including getting the chance to work with Betty White in Hot in Cleveland. And I one day maybe I'll master the technique, but it's very difficult. Also, I have found that unlike movies and unlike theater and unlike one camera television shows, whether it's a half hour comedy or a 1 hour drama, the script changes aren't thrown at you as fast as they are in a live audience show. And you could work all week in rehearsal and the various table reads and the blocking, and then you're doing the show with a live audience and these wonderful groups of writing teams based on how the audience responds to that one moment that you've been working on all week long. Like, I think we could do it better. And boom, 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 boom. And here's like a whole new page of material that you just have to do live. And sometimes it works and it's exciting as hell. And then other times you fall flat on your face and it's a bit embarrassing, but it's always nerve wracking, which makes it exciting. But yeah, I would far prefer to do anything anything else, but I'm always up for the challenge if a long running live audience gig should come about again.
Oh, I have a feeling you do it great. I have to pick up on something you said. Your beautiful and super talented wife, Jennifer Finnegan, you worked with her in Moonshine. Are you each other's acting coaches?
That's a fascinating question. We've been together now for over 20 years. So we definitely have a shorthand, whether we're working together or not. We've worked together on so many projects, acting, producing, direct. We've even directed together. And on Moonshine, which we shot in beautiful Nova Scotia, Canada, for 3 years, she's the lead. I just play her jerky husband, soon to be ex-husband. But yes, we definitely have a trust of one another as actors. We love giving each other notes, little pats on the back of, oh, try it this way, and it'd be funny if you can. So yeah, in a way, we are each other's coaches, amongst many other things.
I think that's great. So let me ask you, Jonathan, about your new film, Feeling Randy. It's based on the real life experiences of the writer and director Dean Lent. The movie takes us back to the time that Dean and three of his high school buddies took a road trip to a brothel in Nevada so he could prove to himself that he was straight and not gay. You play a macho, abusive father with a rather bizarre behavioral issue that I won't reveal here so I don't spoil it for people. But I do want to ask you, what drew you to that role?
First of all, I have to say I love this movie. As soon as I read it, I loved the movie. I didn't want to play this part. I was like, I can't even figure out how to attack it in the first scene. It's just so not me. I'm the wrong guy. I'm so honored that this wonderful writer, director, Dean Lent, has invited me to come join. But I will have a conversation with him. Maybe I will convince him to ask me to be in his next movie, but I'm going to figure out a way to politely say, I'm the wrong guy. Your movie needs a different actor. And just talking with him for 20, 30 minutes, I just fell in love with him and said, I'm in. When do I start? Let's do this. Not an easy role, incredibly challenging piece, the opposite of everything I believe in as a human and as a dad, because I am a new dad. And certainly at the time we were making it, I was a very new dad. He's so, he's just so cruel to his kid. And his son is just trying to figure out who and what he is. And his dad is just pure evil. There were parts of it that were fun to do. I don't always get to play the crazy bad guy. And then there were parts that I just wanted to go in the corner and, and purge. But ultimately, the result of this film, I'm really glad I'm in it. It's powerful, it's beautiful, it's simple, and it's complicated. And I know it's affected a lot of people who have watched it, and that's kind of what it's all about.
Well, for whatever it's worth, I didn't see your character as evil. I saw him as damaged, wounded.
Yes,
And I
great
think
point.
that's what you conveyed. I want to give a shout out to Reed Miller, who plays the title character of Randy. He's a terrific actor, isn't he?
He's fantastic. He's fantastic. And I don't know if you ever saw, it was a Mark Wahlberg movie, Connie Britton, called Joe Bell. He was Mark Wahlberg's son. Most of the movie, I certainly don't want to ruin it for those who haven't seen it, but he plays a lot of it in Mark Wahlberg's character's imagination. One of the most beautiful performances I have seen in a long time. And when this project came around and I realized I would be playing his dad, I was just so excited, and to get the chance to work with him. What a great kid! What a talented kid! I mean, he's not a kid; he's in his mid-20s, but boy, he's good. He's just dynamite. I'm so excited to see what he's going to do next.
Yeah, he's an excellent actor. His performance was layered, it was complex, it
Yeah,
was nuanced, it was everything you need it to be, especially if someone watching
yeah,
is gay and went
yeah,
through that similar dilemma.
yeah.
I'm asking for a friend. I think I can tell you that it really touched home. Now, I got to tell you, Jonathan, I went on IMDb. I saw that you've got a new movie coming out called Blue Champagne, starring the wonderful Diane Ladd, who appeared on our show last year. Can you tell us anything about it?
God bless IMDb. Their detective work is truly incredible. This is a movie I did a long, long time ago, financed none other than by Jack Nicholson. I hope it means it's going to finally come out or be available to watch. But this was done a very, very long time ago. A really beautiful film, a very dark tale. But I sure enjoy doing it, and I sure hope people will one day be able to get to see it. I mean, if it's in IMDb, it's got to be true.
Yeah, it says it's coming out. When you look back over your body of work, which is very extensive, Jonathan, in terms of the types of roles you've played, the many genres of shows you've appeared in, the many great stars you've worked with, you seem to have avoided being typecast for most of your career. How did you do that?
No idea. It's. I could probably give you some long, bullshit explanation as to, the path and what I'm trying to achieve as an artist. We're we're just wanderers, but I guess getting my start in theater and working with these wonderful character actors, we all just felt, and I still feel lucky to get the job whenever we can get the job. And it doesn't mean you say yes to everything. You need to have, some connection to the material, but you just kind of go where the work is, and work begets work. And if you could find some joy in playing the character, I worked. God, I worked with such a lovely director. His name he passed away. Irvin Kershner. It was a John Lithgow movie. Who, like Jack Lemmon, John Lithgow is one of my idols. But Irv directed so many movies, including one of the original Star Wars movies. But he took me aside, and I don't know. I guess he just felt a kinship as a young actor trying something new, because I was playing a Southern guy, kind of a mean, messed up guy, and he said, "Isn't it fun to just be on a set and try new things?" And I asked myself after each project, I learn on this one? What did I learn? And it's just a great thing. It should continue to be a learning experience, and you should have the opportunity to mess up and fail. But if you could just keep enjoying the work and keep learning, that's kind of the whole trick.
Let me ask you about one thing that I can't find one actor has been able to learn. Have you ever been able to predict whether or not a show that you're in will be a great success?
Of course not. I never would have thought Weekend at Bernie's would have done well. There's just been so many movies that I have done where in the back of my mind, and I'm not terribly optimistic, I'm not pessimistic, but I just try and keep a level head about everything. But there have been a few jobs where I'm thinking, well, finally, this is the one that everyone's going to be talking about, and this is the one where, get ready for the award shows, and it just dies at the box office or gets canceled before episode 2 airs. So no, I don't have that magic touch of premonition, and I don't know if I ever will, but I'll leave it to others.
Well, you're not alone. Now, as we mentioned earlier, your father and grandfather were both rabbis, and your mother was born and raised in Israel before the War of Independence in 1948.
That's
I know
right.
she endured a terrible tragedy in the way she lost her mom during that war. And I know you've been an active member of the Jewish community your whole life. So, in our remaining moments, Jonathan, I want to ask you, what do you have to say about all the anti Semitism that we're facing these days?
It's definitely, I mean, it's awful. It's awful. Eh, I also want to say it's not just these days. I mean, going back thousands of years, the Jewish people have always been persecuted and scapegoated and lived through tragedies. It's incredibly complicated. It's incredibly delicate, and we've had some better times, but right now we're in a valley, and it's horrible. I have half my family comes from Jerusalem, and I'm constantly in contact, mostly via email and hearing and reading the stories of the daily life there, and it's always been difficult, but there's always been a level, even in peaceful times, there's just always been a level of this is where we're meant to be, and strangely enough, my wife, who is a Canadian Irish Catholic, she and I love to travel, live to travel. Even now, as new parents, we just got back. We took our daughter to France and Switzerland and the UK. But every time Jen and I would go away, she would say, "Hey, we're going to be in Greece. Let's go to Israel. Hey, we're going to be in Turkey. Let's go to Israel." And I had been to Israel many, many times before this point. And I said, one day, honey, one day, but let's go somewhere. Let's go somewhere quiet. Let's go somewhere where I won't have to, look behind my back and wonder if this is it. She ended up getting a job where they shot in Israel. She did a series for FX called Tyrant, which, on a very topical level, was based on the Assad family, who, until a few months ago, were running Syria. And she was the American-born first lady of this fictitious country on the show. But they thought, geez, let's actually shoot it in the Middle East, and they shot it in a suburb of Tel Aviv. And this was about 6 years ago, and the second Gaza war broke out while they were filming. And even though I was with her throughout pre-production and would visit her every month, by the time this war broke out, she was basically stranded there. And I had visions. It was really more, post-traumatic stress of having lost a grandparent in a previous war, and now I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my wife in this one, who's not even not even Israeli. She's not even Jewish. She's not a journalist. She's just an actor doing a show that happens to shoot there. Thankfully, she got out. They evacuated the entire cast, and then they continued shooting the remaining two seasons in Budapest in Hungary. But it's a fascinating place, and I can only hope that one day there will be peace, but it's been many thousands of years without it, so we'll see.
Let's hope for peace. Amen. I mentioned your mother a few moments ago, Jonathan. I have to tell you, I thought I had the quintessential Jewish mother
Yeah.
until I heard the story of what happened to your mother on one of your opening nights. Would you mind telling that story?
Oh my gosh, I think I know what you're talking about. If it's not the story, it's still a good one, and you could ask me for the other one. But I was doing a I was doing a play here in Los Angeles with my dear friend and high school buddy David Schwimmer, and it was opening night, and my mom was going to be there, and she invited her friends, a husband and wife, to join her, and they drove her to the theater, and I guess they were about to park, or they were finding a parking spot, and she got out of the car so he could get into the spot. And I guess she got out a little slowly, or he thought he heard the door slam and he kept driving. Long story short, he ran over her foot. And, she was probably 75 or 80 years old at this point, and she broke her foot. And they were like, oh, no. Oh, my God, I'm so sorry. I thought you were out of the car. Let me take you to the hospital. And my mom said, no, I'm going to see opening night of this play, and I'm going to stand up and give my son an ovation, give him a hug, and then I'll go to the hospital. And she did, and she was, in a cast and crutches for months afterwards. Is that the story?
Yes, and that
Okay.
tells you everything you ever need to know about your mom, don't you think?
Yep, it sure does.
Well, Johnny, it's been such a pleasure meeting you and having
Thank you.
having this opportunity to chat with you about your amazing life and career. I'm
Thank you, Harvey.
so grateful for all the performances you've brought to all of us. Thank you so much for taking the time to appear on our show.
Thank you so much. You're terrific, and this was a joy. Thank you.
Our guest has been the wonderful actor, producer, and director Jonathan Silverman. His new movie, Feeling Randy, is now available for streaming on Apple TV. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time. Thank you to my producer, Steve Silver, my managers, Rick Marcelli and Robin Bragg Marcelli at the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, my director of programming, Robert Monaghan, my PR directors, Eileen Shapiro and Jimmy Starr, and my entire team at the XPTV1 network in the UK.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.